Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. I'm making a video response in an ongoing discussion that I've been having with the username TalkWithIm, and I once again want to thank you for making a video, another video, and asking for me to correct myself. And once again, I want to apologize. You are correct. I did say in the previous video in our discussion that Ibn Ishaq quoted Waqidi. And you are correct. That is not a true statement. I apologize for that. What I meant to say was that Tabari quotes Waqidi, and yet I said Ibn Ishaq. But you raised a good point, though. Why does that matter? Well, what's interesting is I went back, since I own a copy of Ibn Ishaq, and I went back to check who were the people that told him the story. What was his chain of narration? And what's interesting is that his chain of narrators are weak sources. They themselves are weak sources. I do not believe they are companions of the Prophet. They were contemporaries of his. Maybe one was a little older. But the point is that if you were to take his chain to someone who knew science of hadith, it would be rejected outright anyway. So his sources, whether Waqidi is in there or not, it's irrelevant, really, because we'll come to why it is in a second. But the fact is that his chain of narrators is a weak chain anyway. It would not be deemed authentic according to the science of hadith. Now, you mentioned, or excuse me, now let's come to Waqidi. Now, what's interesting is that Tabari rejects Ibn Ishaq's chain and accepts this other chain, that Waqidi is the crowning achievement of this chain of narrations, and then we go on to find out who Waqidi was, that he was a liar and a fabricator, and thus, like I said in my previous video, everything that we have that is considered Ibn Ishaq's biography is basically preserved in two people's bodies of work. One is the Sirah of Ibn Hisham, who was his student, and the histories of Tabari. What's interesting is that Ibn Hisham, who knew Ibn Ishaq, studied with him. Ibn Ishaq was his teacher. When he goes to write his own Sirah, which is considered one of the most authentic Sirahs that we have, he rejects the story of the Satanic Verses and any chain of narrators that accompanies it, because he was familiar with the science of Hadith. Tabari, on the other hand, he includes this, but in his introduction to his history says, you know what, I'm adding anything. And so there are going to be some things that people are going to think that are not authentic. That's fine. Deem them as unauthentic. I'm not going to defend them. And I will post the link to where we have that source where I'm quoting Tabari. Now, again, I encourage you before you make another video, because really, now I feel like we're kind of going around in circles now. So I think this really might be the last thing we need to say to each other, because I feel like we're kind of repeating ourselves now. And you're welcome to have your point of view. I'm welcome to have mine. That's fine. I think that we've both done a good job of presenting our evidence for the viewers to decide. And you kind of said that in the text of your newest video, where you said, let's just, we'll let the viewers decide. I think that's kind of where we need to end with this now, because anything else is we're just going to be going around in circles. Now, another point that you mentioned Imam Bukhari. And you mentioned something that I know is not correct. Now, I'm not saying that you purposely included this. I'm just saying that I think this is a misconception. And again, I will post the links to these relevant articles so you can read up on this for your benefit. You made a statement about Bukhari. And again, you said, why is it, according to historians, why is it that we have so many stories many years later after the Prophet's death than we had that were circulating during the time? And again, I kind of touched on this in my previous video. I said, I'm not here to object to the fact that there might have been an increase in making up stories of the Prophet. But my point is that, Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim and all the other hadith collectors, they were aware of this as well. So that is why they came up with the science of hadith to sift through, as I said, all the stories that were going on to figure out which ones were authentic and which ones were not. So I agree with you. There probably was a lot of stories that were being invented, but this is why we have the science of hadith to find out which ones are authentic and which ones are not. Now, you mentioned, going back to Imam Bukhari, you said, okay, well, the thing is that he wrote a separate book about the narrators of the hadiths, and then you said that he rejected a lot of these narrators, yet some hadiths were added into his hadith collection posthumously. Now, there is an article that I have, and I will provide the link in the description section, that refutes that idea. Refutes the idea that hadiths were added after Bukhari's death. So that will be for you to read. And I also encourage you to watch the other two videos that I posted for you. Both of them are by Iqra Productions. One is about the Satanic Verses, where they literally destroy this argument, and Ibn Ishaq, where Iqra Productions does a great job of discussing the authenticity of Ibn Ishaq in general. I encourage you to watch both those videos and to read all the articles I have provided for you, for your benefit, of course, and for the benefit of our viewers. Now, you mentioned, then you kind of, I don't know where you were going with this, but then you start talking about, is Muhammad even a historical figure? And granted, you're welcome to your beliefs on this. If you want to believe that Muhammad was not a real live person, that's fine. However, it is my assertion, and my assertion alone, with regards to this, that all major historians, ancient, classical, medieval, contemporary, modern, all do not reject the idea that Muhammad was a real live person. There are people who come along and they trying to say that a lot of historical events didn't happen. Heck, we have people who believe the moon landing didn't occur. So, this is the opinion of a lot of people who come along and say, I don't think this historically happened, or I don't believe this historical person really existed. The thing is that I do not know of any credible historian that denies that Muhammad existed. So that would be my assertion on that. I mean, we know that the medieval historians believed he existed. They were having so much fun bashing his character in Christendom that if he didn't exist, man, they were wasting their time. So this really has become a more modern assertion that he did not exist, which is kind of interesting because that is something that is not just coming up from Muhammad, but Jesus Christ as well, and also a lot of other historical figures. I mean, how do we really know that any of these people existed, right? But that, again, is a difference of opinion between us and you. And I really think that isn't even a topic worth getting into, because it just all depends on which historian you quote, which history textbook you quote. It just really depends on who you're going to quote, who you're going to believe. Because you could bring up a whole bunch of historians that reject Muhammad historically, and I could bring up a whole bunch of historians, and then we'd just be like, okay, well, which one do we believe in? So really, I think that sort of conversation is not going to get us anywhere, and I'm kind of interested as to why you even brought it up, considering the fact that it wasn't even mentioned in David Wood doesn't reject that Muhammad was or is a historical figure. He believes that Muhammad was, and so I think this is kind of your own personal assertion. That's fine. I'm just not going to touch that because I don't think it's relevant. But I will post, again, the videos that I really encourage you to watch, the articles that I really encourage you to read. Go back into my other videos, because I have similar videos and similar articles in the description section as well. So I think this kind of concludes our conversation, debate with him. I really don't see where else we could go with this. So thank you for this conversation. Peace be with you, and peace be with you all.